So what's the real cost of running a country like Nigeria? You know, it's not just about the trillions of naira that get spent. It's about the trillions in potential that just seem to vanish into thin air. We're going to break down this staggering gap between the money that's been poured into the country and the reality people are living on the ground. It's a story of what is versus what could have been.
It really is a tale of two different Nigerias. On one hand, you have a nation with immense spending, huge numbers on a spreadsheet, and on the other, you have the daily, stark reality for its citizens. So let's dive into the numbers, because they expose a disconnect that is, frankly, shocking.
Let's start with a number that's hard to even wrap your head around. Over 50 trillion naira. That is the estimated economic loss just from insecurity alone. And to be crystal clear, this isn't just a number on a page. It's a massive black hole that has swallowed money that should have been building roads, schools, and hospitals.
And what does that 50 trillion naira drain actually look like in the real world? Well, it looks like this. 7.2 million businesses that had to shut their doors. Each one of those was a dream, a source of jobs, a family's livelihood. Just gone, wiped out by an impossible economic environment. Now here's a number that captures a frustration that millions of people feel literally every single day. In just 10 years, the national power grid has collapsed over 138 times. I mean, think about that for a second. It's this constant, jarring reminder of a system that's failing, a system that just switches off life and business without warning. This slide, well, it lays out the brutal equation. On one side of the balance sheet, you've got trillions and trillions spent servicing debt and lost to insecurity. And on the other side, what did Nigeria get for it? A 46% poverty rate, the majority of roads in terrible shape, and an absolutely unimaginable human cost. The question isn't just what happened, but how on earth did this disconnect get so extreme?
Well, a big part of the answer to how lies buried deep within the national budget. When you look closely, it reveals a system where money just seems to disappear long before it can ever do any good for the public. The breakdown is, well, it's pretty shocking.
Okay, take a look at this chart. It reveals a stunning truth about Nigeria's finances. Before a single new road is paved or a single new hospital is even considered, over two-thirds, almost 70% of the entire budget is already gone. It's consumed by paying off debt and covering the government's running costs. The future of the country is literally being built with whatever is left over.
And this isn't some one-off problem. This chart shows the trend over the last 5 years, and you can see the gap widening. Nigeria has spent more money, over 24 trillion naira, just to service old debts than it has on building new infrastructure for the future. You could say the country is being forced to invest more in its past than in its own future. Let that sink in for a moment. For every 1 naira the government earned, 1 naira and 62 kobo went right back out the door to pay for debt. It means the country is spending more than it makes just to cover the interest, forcing it to borrow new money just to pay off the old money. I mean, that is the literal definition of a debt trap, and it is starving the rest of the economy of oxygen. You know, all these trillions can start to feel a bit abstract, right? Just huge numbers on a screen. But the consequences of these budget decisions are incredibly real. So let's look at how this translates into the daily, lived experience for millions of Nigerians.
This timeline shows the power crisis isn't just bad, it's getting worse and it's accelerating. I mean, look at the jump. From an average over 13 years to suddenly, bam, 5 collapses in a single month, and then 8 in another. For a business, that means you're constantly burning expensive fuel in a generator. For a family, it just means life in the dark.
And this underfunding crisis goes way beyond electricity. Look at what's happening to human capital. Nigeria's budget for health and education is less than half of what international bodies like the WHO and UNESCO say is the minimum for a developing nation. This isn't just a numbers game. It has a direct impact on people's health, on their kids' education, and on the entire country's future.
And then there's security. A colossal 13.55 trillion naira spent in just 5 years. So we have to ask the simple, direct question, what was the result? After all that spending, are Nigerians actually any safer?
The data's answer is just devastating. That $13.55 trillion bought this. Over 80,000 deaths, 3 million people driven from their homes, a booming kidnapping for ransom industry, and nearly 8 million people who now depend on humanitarian aid just to survive. It's a brutal bottom line. The money was spent, but security was not delivered.
Okay, and this brings us to what might be the most powerful and maybe the most painful part of the story, the opportunity cost. What could have been built with all that money that was lost or wasted or misdirected? Let's take a moment to explore the Nigeria that wasn't built, but absolutely could have been.
So let's just imagine for a second. Let's start with electricity. An investment of 20 trillion naira, which is just a fraction of what we've seen lost to insecurity and other failures, could have completely transformed the entire energy sector. So what would that actually look like?
Just picture this alternative reality for a minute. Stable, 24-hour electricity for everyone, nationwide. A massive increase in available power. 5 million new jobs created as a result. And get this, saving $29 billion every single year that citizens and businesses are currently forced to spend just to power their own generators. This wasn't some fantasy, it was an achievable goal.
Now, let's apply that same what-if logic to another critical area, roads. With just 10 trillion naira, again a fraction of the wasted resources, what could Nigeria's transportation network have looked like today? The impact would have been profound. We're talking 50,000 kilometers of new, modern roads. Food prices could have dropped by up to 30%, simply because farmers could actually get their produce to market efficiently. Travel times across the country would be slashed, boosting the entire economy, and it would have created 2 million jobs just in the construction process.
And here is the most difficult truth in all of this. None of this was a fantasy. It wasn't some impossible dream. The money was there. The expertise to do it was available. This wasn't a failure of resources. It was a failure of priorities, a failure of accountability, and a failure of will.
So after seeing the staggering scale of this problem, the obvious question is, can this cycle even be broken? Is a reset possible? Well, according to the sources, there is a proposed path forward.
The proposed solution is basically a three-pronged attack. First, you have to restructure the crippling debt to free up cash for actual development. Second, you need a revenue revolution, plugging the countless leaks that drain public money away. And third, a serious, sustained crackdown on corruption, with real consequences, to restore some semblance of trust and accountability.
And that leaves us with this final, powerful question. The plans for a better future, they aren't secret, they're well documented, and the resources, as we've seen, though they were squandered, they have always existed. The only remaining variable, the one thing you can't budget for or borrow, is the political will to actually make it happen.